This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
We are talking more with Mark Pucci. He is a former New York City police detective. As we dig deeper and deeper into the case of Alex Murdaugh, what's your take been on his body language, both on the stand and off? There's been a lot of interesting movements with him. And obviously, it's an emotional thing. You're fighting for your life there, and you're being accused of doing something absolutely horrific. But some of it seems, voluntary, like I'm going to look this way now. And some of it almost seems like you're, throwing water on the Wicked Witch of the West. And it's just like I'm melting and I can't control my shaking and my rocking back and forth like a 10-year-old in a corner. What's been your take on it?
Yeah, well, I'll just preface that by saying, even the best Academy Award winning actors and actresses have to retake scenes,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he definitely, I would say, and again, I'm not, wouldn't put myself out as a body language expert. I do, really, really try to, to understand as much as I can, but you can definitely see he's fighting to control where his eye contact is. He's constantly just slightly looking down, so say at the knee or lower level. So he's not making a lot of direct eye contact. But when he does make direct eye contact, or he puts his glasses at the end of his nose, he's absolutely trying to drive home a specific point. So if you go back and we look at all the times that he did do that, that was, something that was very, very specific, very important, that he wanted to make sure that he was, really, really driving it home, which again leads itself to deliberate and not authentic.
Yeah, I thought when the snot was flowing down his face, that was an interesting one. Like there's tissues there, dude. But I think he wanted that because one of the biggest criticisms of him has been he doesn't cry. He hasn't cried at anything, but he got himself to cry. We saw tears and we saw other fluids coming out of his face. So that was impressive. Because I was wondering if we ever really were going to see that, but and
he's definitely reviewing the court of public opinion. Every social media post, every news outlet post that he can on, how the court of public opinion is, rating his performance and then adjusting it accordingly.
Let me ask you this on the prosecution, because I'm curious to get someone else's take. I felt like Creighton Waters is probably looking at social media quite frequently. And I feel like some of the things he was trying to argue there in cross were like taking literally from some of our postings over the last couple of weeks, well, especially when he went to Family Annihilator, because I sent a message over to Jennifer Coffindaffer immediately when I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, he's going on the road we've been talking about. But it really stopped. It was just like, are you a family annihilator? With no context. Like no one knows what the hell that even means unless you give it some context.
You have to get your legal department to trademark things more quickly.
Oh my God. It was just like, where are you coming up with this if you're not just like, but again, no context. It felt like he really wasn't giving the jury, any reason to, his words held no weight, I guess is what I'm trying to say when he was going after him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that seems to be the consensus, across the board as well. It's always interesting, when you see, like all these, prosecutors in, every county, every state, it's business as usual. Then you get a case like this, and it's anything but, so some, shine and others, may. You may see the cracks, in their armor.
Sure. What's your thoughts on the field trip that they're going to be taking to Moselle to take a look at the spaces, the rooms that these crimes took place in? several years ago. I know that was the defense that's requesting it initially. This really hasn't been a case where we've seen a lot of arguing or points being made about spatial issues with any of this. Why do you think that request has been made, and how do you think that's going to play out?
That's interesting. The only thing, they must feel that there's going to be, being able to have the jurors physically be at the location, may elicit some sort of a more personal or hopefully sympathetic, response from them. I can't see any other, unless you were trying to refute, space, distance, time, things of that nature where you're physically showing, that the defendant could not have possibly been in location A and then moved to location B in the allotted time period or things of that nature. That's, in my experience, that's more of the reason. And then, if there's a sentimental, kind of possibility that you could elicit from that, that would be another, major reason why you would do that.
It seems like those haven't really been big arguments at all in this case, though. That's why I'm confused as to what they're going to, it's like Miss Jen going to come out with some Southern sweet tea, and then they can have a little bit of pie, then they go, and there's where Paw laid, and his brain went over there. And it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I know today that and I haven't seen much of the coverage today because I've been just doing interviews, was someone pointing out that if Paul had been shot at the close range that they believe he was, that the killer would have had, brain splatter on them. I'm not trying to be gross, but and all of that. And I don't know if that's a good argument for him, because he's wearing a crystal clear white T-shirt they're like, when police show up, I almost feel like that's more of an argument of like, yeah, he probably was covered in stuff and now he looks completely clean. So I don't know how that's going to play, or if that's part of the argument of going on this field trip, if that's kind of the angle they're going of, well, it couldn't have happened like this because of the spatial things in the actual building itself.
Mm-hmm. And and without any of that, like say possible change of clothes or other evidence. For all we know, he had a hazmat suit on. Yeah. At that moment. But I did see a little bit of the coverage, and they were talking about, like the type of wound and the distance, where on a more of a torso would have been a circular, just mimicking the actual diameter of the barrel. And in this case, because it was more of a rigid, area, being the head, they had more of a wavy, kind of wound as well. But again, it's always interesting to see, it's almost like the wizard behind the curtain, exactly what you're saying, okay, that seems odd. There's, these several possibilities, but let's see what your real, reason, for making these requests are.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
Mark Pucci, thank you for joining us and giving us your insight into the ever-evolving case against Alex Murdaugh. Always appreciate that. Press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our breaking updates and discussions on this and the many cases we're following for you. Need a complete list of all the cases that we're covering in the description of this episode right now. You can follow me on Twitter at TonyBPod. Stay with us.